Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and finally getting around to making and sharing this card for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge, which I will have linked in my blog post below the video. So I decided to pull out the Mama Elephant Botanic Hello stamp set. I've used this a couple times already. I will again have links to this those videos at the end of this one as well, because I noticed after I did this one that each time I used a different type of watercolor with it, and I've made three very different cards. So I love this set. I think it's so pretty. So I used some Canson XL watercolor paper, and I have the textured side facing up. I used my anti-static powder tool first, and then I stamped the image with my Fiskars stamp press and Simon Says clear embossing ink. And then I used Hero Arts white embossing powder and tapped off the excess, and then I'm going to melt all of that with my heat tool. So did all that and then got out my hardboard here, and I'm going to tape this down with some painter's tape. I had cut this piece to larger than the standard A2 size. It's roughly like 5 by 6 inches, something like that. Before I started this, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do just a solid simple A2 size panel in the end, or if I'm going to die cut it. So I wanted to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. So I did all that, and then to watercolor this, I had watched a video not too long ago by Kelly Latavola, who I will hopefully link to her video. She did it on the W+9 channel, and she did this gorgeous watercoloring, and I loved how the colors seemed to bleed outside the images. It was really, really pretty. And looking at the card, I was like, how did she pull that off? And then I watched the video and I was like, oh, okay. Really liked it. So I was like, I want to try and see if I can do something like that and, make something pretty. So I wet the entire image as well as outside the embossed lines, because that's a nice thing. And I've said this so many times. That's why I love embossing images, because, it keeps things more contained. However, I wanted the color to bleed outside the lines. So, because I love the look of that. I think it's so pretty. So I wet that whole image as well as just, created a whole wet area all the way around on the outside. And then I'm using different distress inks, and I'm picking up the color and applying it while everything is wet. And I'm purposely using like a lighter concentration of the inks. I'm not making the color really, really dark. I didn't want it to be super, super bright. This still is fairly bright because of the colors I chose. Like, I'm using Picked Raspberry and Wilted Violet, Mermaid Lagoon, and Bundled Sage because, like I said, it's for a color challenge. So these were the closest colors. So I did all that, dried it completely with my heat tool, and then I'm going back in with those same colors and a smaller paintbrush. This time I'm using a silver size 4. Yeah, size 4. And just dropping in these colors and just kind of letting them mix into each other. I'm mainly using I'm using the Picked Raspberry, the Wilted Violet, and the Mermaid Lagoon for the flowers themselves. And mixing all three of them onto these flowers, making them super bright and vibrant and just kind of having fun with it. Really, I love these colors together. They're so pretty. But like, as you're doing something like this, like even in the beginning, I was just like, and even painting these flowers at first, as I was painting them, I was like, I don't even know. Everything kind of looks as a mess. But as you let things dry, the color starts to pop and it starts to look so much better. So I did all the flowers, and then I went in with that Bundled Sage and painted in all the leaves, kept that really simple, didn't add any other layers or anything else like that. And then once I was done with all of that, I pulled out Hickory Smoke Distress ink. I decided to paint the letters in this gray just to get them to kind of stand out a little bit more from all the color going on behind the flowers. So I did a couple layers of that, and then I'm going to let everything completely dry before I remove it from my hardboard here. So paint it all in, let it all dry, and then I'm going to peel off all of this painter's tape. That's also the nice thing about cutting it larger, is if you accidentally do rip it, which I didn't this time, but if you accidentally do rip it, if it's been cut larger, you don't have to worry so much because you can cut it off or die cut it off, whatever you decide to do. So I ended up deciding to use the largest die from My Favorite Things, Wonky Stitched Rectangle Stacks Dynamics. Big surprise, I use this all the time. So I did that, and then I also die cut some black and white striped paper from the MFT Dots and Stripe Neutrals 6x6 pack. Again, big surprise. That's my last striped one of the black and white stripe in that pack. I've used up all of it. So I used Simon Says large, A2 sized basic rectangle die for that one. And then I got out my card base, and it's heavyweight white cardstock cut to 5.5 by 8.5 and then scored at 4 1/4. So it'll be an A2 size card, 4 1/4 by 5.5. And then I'm using a sentiment from the new Mama Elephant Sweetest Greetings stamp set. And I put it on my stamp press, and then I inked it up with all 4 of those main distress inks that I used on the outside. And regular distress inks doesn't stamp the greatest. It's just not meant for that. But I knew this, so I was like, I wonder if I can, maybe I can get this lined up and stamp it a second time, which is usually really iffy, and 9 times out of 10 I mess it up. But I inked it up again with all those colors, and then got my head in the way, so I was looking straight down over it and was able to stamp it a second time just to kind of smooth it out just the littlest bit. It doesn't smooth out a ton, but it was good enough for me because I was like, I just liked how, the colors matched the outside, etc. And then I had this leftover strip of the black and white striped paper after die cutting the piece for the front. So trim that down. I'm going to adhere that to the inside of the card with my Xyron Mega tape runner. And while I was doing this card, my intention was to cut out the center of that black and white striped pattern paper because I'm covering up most of it. All you're going to see is the border. And I've shown this before in videos. Either you can use another rectangle die cut or just use your paper cutter. Like, trim out the bulk of that paper so you can save it for something else, especially when it's a black and white stripe, because you use that on everything. And I was in my own little world when I got to this point and was trying to beat the clock. I was running behind. Everything was going wrong, of course. So I just applied adhesive and adhered it down, and once it was fully adhered, you can't go back after that. So I was really mad at myself for wasting all this paper on this card, because you literally only see that tiny little bit. So yeah, lesson learned, FYI, when you're doing things like that and stacking layers, if you have certain papers that you want to conserve, cut out the centers because no one's going to see it. So I adhered the watercolor panel with some foam tape. And then I pulled out my Pico Embellisher. I've been using the clear again in the last few videos, but this time I pulled out the Shimmer one, which is clear with just the littlest bit of gold sparkle. I was fairly heavy-handed with this, a little bit more heavy-handed than I had intended to be, but once you get going, sometimes you just can't stop. So I filled in all of the letters with this Shimmer Pico Embellisher. People have been asking me again, what's the difference between this, like not the shimmer one, but the basic one, the clear one, and glossy accents. This product is thinner. I would consider it more watery. It doesn't, it's not as raised and thick and glossy as glossy accents, but because it's thinner, it dries faster. So to each their own. And also it has the super fine detail applicator tip, but you can also get an applicator tip for your glossy accents bottle. I use the same one that I use on my multimedia mat. There's that. And then for these embellishments, these are the Studio Katya sparkling crystals that I absolutely love. So I sprinkled these rather liberally on my card. And then I'm picking them up with my Crystal Katana and applying them with glossy accents. Same thing. I like using the glossy accents for these because it doesn't dull anything, and they keep their, clear shimmer, all that kind of stuff. So adhered everything into place, and that finished off my card. So I will have a link below the video to my blog post with links to all the supplies used, pictures, all that info will be in the description box below the video, so you can check that out if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!